Coming up on the first edition of the 2025 High School Football Report, we will review Week 1 with Rob Hunt of the Herald-Bulletin, Scott Hunt of the Marion Chronicle, Richie Hall of the Hamilton County Reporter, and Jay Stevens of the Kokomo Post. That will be followed by our weekly awards, which include our top player performances, Offensive Player of the Week, Defensive Player of the Week, and Two-Way Player of the Week, and our Team Performance Awards, the Win of the Week, the Coach of the Week, and the Team of the Week. I've been very sick this week, actually missed a couple of days of work, which, if you've been listening to this podcast, you know I just don't do very much. So we are a day behind normal. Normally, the football report will be released on Tuesday evenings. This means we're going to have football coverage the next 4 straight days. On Thursday, we will preview and predict all 35 local high school football games. On Friday, we will have our game of the weekend games to watch. And on Friday night, actually Saturday morning, just after midnight, we will release our high school football scoreboard show. And the same morning, a little later, we will release Central Indiana Sports Central, our daily show. It is an update on the Colts, Pacers, Fever, IU, Purdue, IndyCar, and high school sports. On Saturday, it's almost all high school sports. All we do is talk high school football. So much coming up, and it starts right now. I want to apologize to Grant Schaus, who did a fantastic intro here with me and then joined me for the awards and the top 20 power poll. We do about 100 podcasts a month. About once a month, something goes horribly wrong with the audio. That happened with Grant's audio. Sorry to waste your time, Grant. And sorry to the listeners who don't get to hear what he had to say.
You're listening to the Central Indiana Sports Report with your host, Greg Mengelt.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, high school football fans, and welcome to the Central Indiana Sports Report. I'm your host, Greg Mengelt. Joining me momentarily will be Rob Hunt of the Herald-Bulletin, Scott Hunt of the Marion Chronicle, Richie Hall of the Hamilton County Reporter, and Jay Stevens of the Kokomo Post. You are going to want to hear all of those. That'll be followed by our weekly awards and then our top 20 power poll. And man, that was a tough one this week. We added a whole bunch of schools in Hancock, Hamilton, and Boone counties. They all happen to be really good at football. So please stay tuned for all of that. And before I get to our members of the media with their recaps of Madison, Grant, Hamilton, and Howard counties, let me tell you how we do this. I have a reporter on from each area of our coverage area to talk about the games, either on Friday night after the games, and if they don't have time, which most of the time they don't, I will get their recount on this podcast on Tuesdays. Plus, looking forward to having Will Willems of the Lebanon Reporter on with us in the next week or so. Week 1 was a good one. We had lots of upsets, lots of big wins, including Pendleton Heights' victory over Lebanon. And we start our journey around Central Indiana with Rob Hunt of the Herald-Bulletin, who covered the Pendleton Heights-Lebanon game.
Welcome back to the Central Indiana Sports Report. Rob Hunt of the Herald-Bulletin. And Rob, big win for the Arabians.
Yeah, I think the score doesn't really indicate how much they were in control of that game. 22-14 was the final. 6th straight year, I believe, that they have won their home opener, so that's something. But this Lebanon game has been really competitive the last 2 years. I think it was 48-40 last year. Lebanon won over at their place. The year before, 15-10 or something. It was another close game back here in Pendleton. So you figured it was going to be pretty competitive, but Pendleton dominated, especially in the first half. Just moved the ball on the ground and through the air, and really were dominant on defense. Lebanon snuck a couple touchdowns late, but Pendleton had plenty to hold on and pick up the season opening win.
We knew that Pendleton had to replace a quarterback who's a college football quarterback and a running back who's now a college football running back. Who was able to do that last night?
Brant Gray, junior, started at quarterback. It was his first varsity start. He got a cup of coffee, I believe, last year in relief, but played very well. Made a lot of good decisions, which is key for Pendleton in that offense. Make good decisions, make the right read, make the right play. He did that. The young man ran for the first possession was mostly on the ground, and Weaver carried the ball multiple times, got him down close, and then they punched it in for the first touchdown. Their second score was Brant Gray making the right read on a read option and kept it himself and actually ran untouched, 16 yards for a touchdown. So the young man made a lot of really big plays. In the second half, Pendleton gets a gift on a 11 punt. They snap the ball over the punter's head through the end zone for a safety. Free kick for Lebanon. First play, they go play action pass and Gray throws deep and hits his receiver in stride for a 56-yard touchdown. It was a very impressive game for the young man. He made one mistake late that was a little bit costly, but that's something they're going to learn from. I was very impressed with Mr. Brant Gray, the junior quarterback for Pendleton.
Well, that's good news because he's replacing a pretty good one, and that's not easy to do.
Right. Colton Frank, not just a good quarterback, just an outstanding person, too. What Brand did the other night, made good decisions. He's a smart guy. So, big shoes to fill, but off to a good start. They got some big games coming up, but that was a good start.
Of course, in Madison County, we have a vested interest in the CIC, and Alexandria and Madison Grant seem like two contenders in the CIC, and both of them looked that part last night.
I think that was going to be the case regardless. I don't know that last night's going to be any indication or barometer for them because they were not playing teams that were up to their level. Madison Grant, Tri-Central had to wave the white flag at halftime.
Right.
They didn't have enough healthy bodies, but Madison Grant does what they do, man. Rosin White is an absolute monster carrying the football. I would not want to tackle that dude. I would not want to tackle that dude. Stephon was shot putter. He's a strong kid. They got Barnhart runs the ball well. Harry Brooks runs the ball well. Very talented rushing the ball. That's Madison Grant's bread and butter, and they do it very well. It appears that's not going to change this year. And then Alexandria really took care of business with Westdale. Brady Gast, we've talked about him a few times at quarterback for Alexandria, 5 touchdown passes. You got a lot of guys involved, Fuller and Roland and Eckler. Eckler's a really good athlete. I think that he's a guy who gets overlooked on that team. Really makes a big plays for them in all running, receiving, and kick returns. He's a heck of a player.
And along with Pendleton, very nice win by Lapel. Hamilton Heights is a really good program, and anytime you can start the season beating the Huskies, that's a nice way to go.
Yeah, your Lapel, you go up a class and you go on the road and you pick up a really convincing win. And it started right because Reed Hamilton, who's one of the best athletes at that school, which is saying something, takes the opening kickoff back about 95 yards for a touchdown and gets them right out of the gates on the board. I know Devin Craig had a touchdown pass to Jackson Kripe, who is another one of the great athletes at Lapel at receiver. And then Jack Miller, who's really developed. He's now a 3-year starter in the tailback position, scores a touchdown. So they scored running, passing, and in the special teams. And the defense, very impressive. They hold Hamilton Heights to a touchdown and with a convincing road win. And now they get to come home and play Marty Wells and Franklin.
And with the numbers they have at Anderson, we assume things are going to get better at some point under Shane Arnold, but not a good start to the Shane Arnold era last night.
That's not going to be a mess that gets cleaned up overnight. I 100% believe that Shane Arnold knows what he's doing, and he's going to get that thing going back in the right direction, the right way, but it's not going to happen overnight. And maybe I'm wrong, but by the end of the year, maybe they're winning some games. But I would say this is a years-long investment. The culture hasn't been there. Anderson's never been a strong, football program. We certainly see it in other sports. There are good athletes walking around that building. It's just a matter of getting them, in the pads and on the field and learning the game and invested in the program.
And Rob, no one's more passionate about football than Shane Arnold. They're in good hands there. Thank you so much for your time. Sure. Always appreciate it. And look forward to talking football throughout the season.
We'll do it again soon.
Scott Hunt of the Marion Chronicle was at a really good one. He covered Marion's come from behind. Tim Jones willed victory over Fort Wayne South.
That's one of the wilder football games that I've had the chance to witness in a while. Obviously, this year it's the first one. If I see anything wilder than I saw Friday night, I'll be looking forward to that. But it was a great win for Marion Friday night over a really improved Fort Wayne South team.
It was wild too, Scott.
Last year was 27-21, and it was up at Southside. Last night was Marion prevailed. Southside's only won 3 games in the last 2 years, but they've got speed to burn all over the field. They put it to pretty good use. It was just a back and forth affair, probably close to 1,000 yards of total offense between the two teams. And Southside, had you told me before the game that Southside would have been the big play machine and Marion would have been the grind it out, I would have probably questioned that, but that's exactly the way things worked out. Coach Chambers likes to go fast, and Marion would do a version of a hurry-up offense. They get to the line of scrimmage, they run a play, get to the line of scrimmage, get set, call the next play and go. They would have had a couple 10-play scoring drives that only took 2 or 3 minutes just because they went so fast. But the first 15 or the first quarter, it was scoreless. Marion finally broke on a beautiful throw from Tim Jones to Logan Barnes, who made a diving catch in the corner of the end zone to get the Giants on the board. And then it was all Southside the rest of the first half. Marion led 7-0. Southside did put together a drive. Marion score, went down and tied the game up at 7 with a 9-play drive. Ended up one of the big play in the drive was a 4th and 22 fake punt that went for 27 yards that preceded their first touchdown of the game. 10-yard run. That was with 2:58 left in the first half that tied the game at 7. Marion's very next offensive play was a bad snap from the center that never even got to Tim Jones, and a defensive lineman scooped it up and ran it in. And in 14 seconds after South's first touchdown, they had a 14-7 lead. Marion ran 2 plays. The second one, Tim Jones threw his second pick of the first half. South needed 5 plays, went in and with 1:15 to go, went up 21-7, and that's where the half ended. And talked to Coach Chambers and asked him what he said at halftime, and he said, well, I can't really say that in the newspaper. And he said he directed most of his fire at Tim Jones, and we talked last week about the type of kid and the athlete that Tim Jones is, and Tim came out with a determination that, I don't know that I've seen out of him, and he kind of willed the Giants the second half. It was back and forth, like Marion got the ball to start the second half, down the field, 10-play, 72-yard drive. Jaden Johnson scored from a yard out. That was with just under 8 minutes to go. They cut it to 21-14. Southside returns the next kickoff for a touchdown to go back up by 2 scores. 13-play drive, 81 yards. Tim Jones runs it in from a yard out, 28-20. The PAT failed. After the kickoff, South's first play from scrimmage, 56-yard run, so they're back up 2 scores again. Another 9-play drive for Marion. Jones with another 1-yard run. Marion ran in 2-point conversion as well. They're back within 2. Did put a drive together at the end of the third, beginning of the fourth quarter, went down. Marion actually had a chance to stop them was a 3rd and 16 play from the 24, and their quarterback got free and scored. It was a 10-play drive, and South led 42-28 with 9:44 to play. Marion Jones connected with Lycar Bled's 48-yard pass. It was Marion's shortest scoring drive of the night, 3 plays to cut it. And then they went for 2 again to cut it to 42-36. That was with 8:32 to play. Marion's defense finally was able to stop Southside. They drove it down into Marion's territory, and they came up with a big stop and then forced the punt. Jaden Johnson had a big night after with a 12-yard run with 1:12 to go, tied the game at 42. Marion missed the extra point, so that was the way it is. Southside's offense really didn't make any mistakes all night until the biggest drive of the game, their second play from scrimmage. Fumbled handoff. Marion recovers it at South's 23. Marion's second play. Jones runs it in from 17 yards out with 25 seconds left. That was the difference in the game. Marion missed the extra point again, but that was the 48 points, and just an a wild game in Dick Luton Stadium. You told me last week Tim Jones was one of your favorite players to watch, and second half he only threw 4 passes in the second half. He was 2 for 4. He was 8 for 14 for the game for 135 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. But the second half, he ran 19 times for 162 yards, 3 touchdowns. A total for the game, he had 24 carries for 188 yards for the game. Johnson, huge night. He's been starting at tailback for Marion since his freshman year. He carried 25 times for 170 yards and scored 2 touchdowns.
And big one. They're home next week? And a big game for the Giants at Mississinawa next week. We'll know even more about the Giants after that one. As good as the teams have been in Grant County so far, nothing compared to Hamilton County. Hamilton County nearly went unbeaten on Friday night. The only losses Fishers was to fellow Hamilton County program Carmel, and Hamilton Heights lost a 23-7 decision to a highly ranked 2A lapel team. That's the game Richie Hall took in. Richie Hall of the Hamilton County Reporter. And here's his report on that game and what happened Friday night in Hamilton County. Welcome back to the Central Indiana Sports Report. Hamilton County Reporter sports editor Richie Hall, who got to see an impressive performance on Friday night by the Lapel Bulldogs. Richie, welcome back to the Central Indiana Sports Report. And, man, the Bulldogs were impressive.
They played well. They started the game with right from the opening kickoff, taking the ball 95 yards for a touchdown. So
that helps.
Heights, yeah, that does. Heights on their heels a little bit. Heights was able to hold up relatively well during the game. This is a team that has kind of an experienced defense, a lot of seniors, but your coach has been telling me that their offense is pretty young. Also, they have a junior quarterback. They have a couple new rushers. The receivers did pretty well. They got their touchdown in the second quarter on a 22-yard reception. Quarterback Drew Woodruff to Cam Fleming.
Let me tell you, Richie, if you hold Lapel's offense to 23 points, your defense is pretty good.
You can tell there's a lot of experience in there. There were a couple of good plays. I want to highlight Dre Chandler and Nick Bechet. They both had pass breakups from Lapel when they were first and goal. So the defense do pretty well. They're just kind of having to mix along with the young offense too. But I have a feeling that once the offense starts to mature a little bit, that it could turn into a pretty decent season for Hamilton Heights. Especially if they start to get production out of the offense, and it starts this week at Triton Central, a game you would think that they would have a chance to win. I think so. I'm not sure what Triton Central's ranked. I think they're always one of those teams that, they're a smaller team, but they're always good. I tend to never assume anything about the smaller teams because you just never know who's good and who isn't. Yeah, last year they came into town and beat the Huskies 17-14, so should be a good one. I think, seems to me Hamilton Heights is at least as good as they were at the start of last season, right? Yeah, I think so. Just once the new younger players start to do well on offense, then I think they should have a pretty decent season. Some very winnable games coming up that should be able to get off to a good start. Speaking of good starts, a great start for Hamilton County across the board. Lots of wins and a big win for Jake Chesney and the Sheridan Blackhawks. And that's what everybody was looking for, because Jake Chesney coming in as Sheridan's first new coach in a very long time, and how he would do, and it seemed like he did pretty well. You got a lot of things accomplished in that first game. First of all, they led 12-0, then were down 21-12, and then came back to win 32-29 on a 40-yard run by John Barnes midway through the fourth quarter. That's probably had to have been one of the most closely paid attention to 1A games in the state. And the thing I shared is that Jake Chesney is a new head coach, but he's been there for a while, and there's quite a few familiar names for Sheridan too. Like Barnes has been a starter for a long time. Alex Cravens, Chance Spencer, the quarterback Brock Hagan. He has some experience. So it's a new head coach, but it's not necessarily an inexperienced group. They held their own pretty well and managed to get a win on the road.
Westfield, very impressive in a 35-0 win over Homestead.
I just happened to see the football coaches rankings just now. I know they're in the top 3 in 6A. Brownsburg is number 1. So
yeah, and they look really good.
Yeah, they did. So Westfield is 3, and interesting thing is that Carmel is ranked, I think they are 7th. I know they're in the top 10, and it's going to be a very, very good game Friday at Carmel where Westfield comes.
And that was the one I was going to bring up next. Great win for Kevin Wright in his return for the Greyhounds. A game that I called a toss-up at Fishers, and Carmel 40-24.
What's amazing is that, we had my friend Rich Torres was at the game. He totaled up 304 yards rushing, 6 touchdowns, 239 passing yards. So that's that would be 543 total yards of offense. And to Anthony Cole, 108 yards rushing. Andrew Pemberton, 101. Carmel's really trying to get back to where they were, being one of the powerhouses, classics. Kevin Wright's back. And when I talked to Kevin Wright a couple times, it seemed like he wasn't trying to have there be too many expectations for Carmel, just because not having come out for having like a 3-7 record last year and to sound like we're going to be state champions. So I think he was just focused on one game at a time, just get the first game, and they got the first game and they won. I think he definitely has the Carmel back in the right direction.
And Hamilton Southeastern won, and Guerin won, and Noblesville won. It was a very successful night for Hamilton County. Richie Hall, thank you so much for your time. Always appreciate it and love those football Fridays.
Okay, well, thanks, Greg. I appreciate it.
And finally, we have Jay Stevens of the Kokomo Post, who was at New Palestine's 52-0 win over Kokomo. Jay's going to talk about just how good the Dragons are. He's also going to talk about the rest of Howard County, Eastern's big win, Taylor's impressive performance, and much more. Here is Jay Stevens of the Kokomo Post.
Welcome to the Central Indiana Sports Report. Jay Stevens of the Kokomo Post. And Jay, how good are the New Palestine Dragons?
That's probably one of the better teams you're going to find in either Class 5 or 6A. They were dominant. You knew going into the game against Kokomo that they were the more dominant team, but they really exercised their will early in that one.
They've won several state championships, including last year, and this might be the best team they've ever had. That's how good they are.
Yeah, they definitely are. They got star players all over the place. Numerous guys that wanted to play ball in college, and they didn't waste any time exercising their muscle and making Kokomo really just fall into whatever New Pal wanted to do that night.
Special team. But you are from the Kokomo Post, so let's talk a little bit about the Kokomo Wildcats and Caleb Small taking over the program. A lot of hope in Caleb Small there. A lot of positive momentum. Michelle Garman and I were talking before the game. We hope that the inevitable beating they were going to take from New Pal isn't going to hurt their confidence, because this should be a pretty good year for Kokomo, shouldn't it?
You would think so. They are dealing with a lot of injuries. Even before 2 weeks ago, they had to revamp the quarterback position because quarterback was hurt. So Brandon Humphreys got the start against New Pal. And a couple weeks ago, he found out he was going to be playing quarterback. He had never been a quarterback before. Ooh. So they have injuries at quarterback, running back. One of the corners is hurt. They had a lineman go down during the game. He had ice on his ankle during the game, and he was ruled out for the rest of that game. There's a lot of athleticism. There's a lot of hope. But that beatdown was pretty bad. New Pal had over 370 yards on the ground. They were literally doing whatever they wanted to do. There's a lot of belief and hope for Kokomo, but they got to get healthy first. Once they're healthy, you can kind of think they'll be fine, but they're just not healthy right now.
400 yards on the ground, and they also have probably the best wide receiver in all of Indiana. It's crazy just how good they are. Coming up this Friday, Terre Haute South comes to town, and it seems like that might be just what the doctor ordered. A good chance for Kokomo to get in the win column.
I think if Kokomo were healthy, all goes back to health. If they were healthy while working with a new system, they're going away from the heavy run structure of Austin Colby to the spread offense of Caleb Small, where the players are excited about doing a new system and being more wide open and playing what you see on TV, but they're just not healthy. And I think this game's actually going to be a lot closer than people may think. Kokomo does have home field advantage once again, like it did at week 1 against New Palestine, but I don't know what Kokomo's health is going to be in week 2. And so where I pencil this one in as an early win in the preseason when I was trying to predict Kokomo's record, right now it's a toss-up game for me because this Kokomo team, even on defense, where they can do some things you would think defensively and be a little bit difficult in pass coverage, they couldn't tackle on Friday night. And so Terre Haute South, if they are able to do some things on the ground, that could be Kokomo's kryptonite.
Next 4 games, Terre Haute South, Monrovia, Jeffersonville, Anderson. I would think Kokomo would be favored in all of them, so a good chance to get off to a good start. Speaking of good starts, big win for Coach Edwards and the Eastern Comets on Friday over Oak Hill.
Man, they haven't beaten Oak Hill in the opener in a few years. I think going back to 2020. And I was going into this one knowing the returning talent that Eastern had, knowing that they have a starting quarterback once again, and they have guys like Caleb Hurt on the team that can provide a lot of firepower throughout the air. But I thought Oak Hill was going to have Eastern's number once again, but they didn't. Oak Hill scored with 46 seconds left. They took a 2-point lead by hitting a 2-point conversion. Next thing you know, with 4.8 seconds left, Gibson Eagle hits Caleb Hurt for a 30-yard touchdown pass. Eastern has a lead, and they win that thing. Good start for the Comets, who are trying to win back-to-back sectional titles this year for the first time in program history.
And then Taylor coming off its first sectional championship of all time, 64-0. Didn't see that coming.
Rob Patchett has something going going over there at Taylor. Javion Harris, as Rob Patchett said last year before the first game that he coached at Taylor about Harris, he said that Harris is a D1 athlete. You just had to get him, coach him up, and help him mature as a football player. Well, Javion Harris, by my count, had 5 touchdowns on Friday night, 3 on the ground, 2 through the air. And it was really the Titans' defense. Now, last year, the defense was really, really solid. But to open up against a North White team that battle with Taylor a year ago, the season opener, and you go into their place and you they put up a goose egg, you score 64, and even some of your backups are scoring as well. That's a great strong start to the season.
We know Taylor can put up points to get that shutout. That's a big deal, and they might be the favorites in that sectional once again.
They might be. It's a tough road. You got a lot of teams that they're very familiar with. They'll provide some very competitive matchups, but I think Taylor, if they can keep this strong outing going, and I think week 4 they play Eastern. I think that's a real test to see what this team is made of early in the season. Do they battle with Eastern, and are they able to pull off an upset? Or is it a close battle where even if they lose, they're still keeping them morale up throughout the rest of the year? But that matchup week 4, I'm looking ahead to that one because that's one that I think Taylor has circled on their calendars.
And Western took a 20-13 loss to Indian Creek to see their losing streak go to 13 games. But I think Friday they go to North Montgomery. Good chance for them to get a win, and they could really use it.
Yes, they could really use it. That 13-game losing streak is demoralizing. A lot of them were really excited about some of the changes and just the stability that he's going to provide to the program and getting back to the offense that they ran under Alex Stewart. A little bit different when Colby running it than Stewart, but it's still more familiarity with what things they're going to do offensively. 20-13 loss in week 1. It's not good, but they can snap that losing streak next week against North Montgomery, like you said.
I mentioned this on the scoreboard show this week. It's a 13-game losing streak, but that is not a bad program. That schedule is real tough. After North Montgomery, Indianapolis, Lutheran, Tipton, Hamilton Heights, West Lafayette, Tippecanoe Valley, Logansport, 6 straight really good teams before you finish the season with Twin Lakes. So they better get that first win this week.
This schedule maps out very similar to the one a year ago because last
Right.
year, while Lutheran wasn't there, Western had very strong, solid programs week after week after week.
That's
And
right.
even when they were somewhat competitive, they just kind of got away from them later in the games where you get that win next week, you're building morale, you're playing Lutheran week 3. Well, it's on your home field.
Jay Stevens of the Kokomo Post, thank you so much for your time. How can people read or view your content?
Follow us at the Kokomo Post on Instagram and on Facebook. It's the Kokomo Post Sports. All of our content is online at the kokomopost.com. Tons of pictures from games, do some highlight reels as well. But we'll be heavy football from here on out because this is what we love to do with talk and cover football.
And where are you headed this Friday?
I will be at Northwestern for the annual rivalry between the Tigers and the Eastern Comets. It'll be a good one. Talked to Shane Turnipseed earlier, and he just said like Northwestern kind of their inexperience showed late in the game to where they got up early and they weren't able to sustain that lead. Where Eastern, I think, is not only the favorite, they could blow this game wide open because of the experience that they have from last year's team that is still here in 2025.
Boy, if Eastern can beat Oak Hill and Northwestern in back-to-back weeks, that could lead to a really nice season for the Comets. Jay, thank you so much.
Thanks, Greg. I enjoyed it.
Please stay tuned for our weekly awards and our top 20 power poll.
You're listening to the Central Indiana Sports Report with your host, Greg Mengelt.
Once again, so sorry, Grant, that I wasted your time doing these awards, but I am going to keep the picks that you made as the award winners. So Grant still made a huge contribution. Here we go with our Week 1 Players of the Week, and we start with our Offensive Players of the Week. Carmel senior quarterback Anthony Colner threw for 188 yards and a score. He ran for 112 yards and 3 more touchdowns in Carmel's 49-24 win over Fishers. Eastern junior Gibson Eagle was 16 for 27 for 426 yards and 2 touchdowns and led the Comets to a come-from-behind victory over Oak Hill, 26-22. Alexandria senior quarterback Brady Gass was 13 for 15, 307 yards and 5 touchdowns, all in the first half of Alexandria's 47-0 win over Westdale. Taylor senior quarterback Javon Harris was 8 for 10 passing for 154 yards and 2 touchdowns, 6 carries for 124 yards and 4 touchdowns. So in other words, North White never stopped him in a 64-0 victory. And Marion senior Tim Jones was 18 for 14 passing with 135 yards and 2 touchdowns through the air, 3 touchdowns on the ground, including the game winner with 25 seconds left from 17 yards out that gave the Giants a 48-42 win over Fort Wayne South. And the Central Indiana Sports Report Offensive Player of the Week is Taylor senior Javon Harris after his big performance in the Titans' 64-0 win over North White. Congratulations to the Central Indiana Sports Report Week 1 High School Football Player of the Week, Javon Harris. We move now to our Defensive Player of the Week candidates, and it starts with Delphi senior Isaiah Frost, who had 6 tackles, 2 for loss, and a sack in the Oracle's 54-0 shutout victory over Benton Central. Alexandria freshman Wyatt Fuller had 11 tackles and an interception in the Tigers' shutout win over Westdale. Carmel senior Will Massey had 13 tackles, 8 solos, a tackle for loss, and a sack in Carmel's 49-24 win over Fishers. And Westfield senior Isaac Weingart, 9 tackles, 4 solos, 3 tackles for loss, and 2.5 sacks as the Rocks shut out Homestead 35-0. And that makes Westfield senior Isaac Weingart the Central Indiana Sports Report Player of the Week. Congratulations, Isaac Weingart of Westfield. Our two-way Player of the Week nominees, Sheridan senior Alex Cravens ran for 202 yards and had 7 tackles on defense as the Blackhawks beat Greenwood Christian 35-29. Muncie Central Dacian Eccles 132 yards and a score on offense, 5 tackles including 1 for a loss and a sack on defense. Yorktown senior Nate Luzader, 138 yards on just 7 carries and 3 touchdowns. He was stopped by the end zone almost as much as he was stopped by tacklers. In Yorktown's 55-0 win over Anderson, Mississinawa senior Elijah Monday ran for 118 yards and a score and had 9 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, a sack and a quarterback hurry in Mississinawa's 35-0 win over Norwell. Tipton sophomore Quinn Toll 11 for 17, 292 yards and 4 touchdowns on offense. And 5 tackles on defense. Michelle Garman said he rarely left the field in the Blue Devils' 41-12 win over Frankton. But the Central Indiana Sports Report two-way player of the week is Mississinawa senior Elijah Monday at 118 yards rushing, 9 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, a sack, and a quarterback hurry in the Indians' 35-0 shutout win over Norwell. And now we move to our team awards. The nominees for win of the week. The Eastern Comets came from behind to stun Oak Hill for a 26-22 victory. The Elwood Panthers won their first home game in 5 years with a 14-8 win over Southern Wells. Hamilton Southeastern topped Carroll 14-7 in a game that featured a pair of really good teams. After losing most of its offensive production from last year, Pendleton Heights beat Lebanon 22-14 to open the 2025 season. And as we heard from Rob Hunt, it was a more dominating performance than the final score indicated. And the Westfield Shamrocks announced themselves as one of the teams to be in Indiana with a 35-0 shutout of Homestead. Grant's Pickford win of the week, of course, the Elwood Panthers, who won their first home game in 5 years, 14-8 over Southern Wells. Congratulations to the Elwood Panthers. The Central Indiana Sports Report Week 2 win of the week. Our Coach of the Week nominees, Muncie Central head coach Kyle Burrish led Muncie Central to a 16-13 win over Delta, quite an upset in his debut as the Bearcats head coach. Sheridan's Jake Chesney also won in his debut as Sheridan's head coach, 32-29 over Greenwood Christian. And, of course, one of the biggest wins of the week was Eastern's 26-22 win over Oak Hill. Josh Edwards is a nominee for Coach of the Week. In his first game as Eastern Hancock's football head coach, Josh Holden led the Royals to a stunning 50-14 blowout win over Greencastle. And Kevin Wright returned to Carmel and led the Greyhounds to a big 47-24 win over rival Fishers. The Central Indiana Sports Report Coach of the Week for Week 1, Kyle Burrish of Muncie Central. As good as the other coaching performances were, there was no doubt about this one. Kyle Burrish, congratulations. You're the Central Indiana Sports Report Week 1 Coach of the Week. And now to our Team of the Week, and how you get on the Team of the Week nomination list is you're one of the best teams in Indiana. All 5 teams on this list are on the top 10 of our upcoming Central Indiana Sports Report Top 20 Power Poll. Huge win for Carmel over a top-flight team in Fishers, 49-24. The Eastern Panthers opened their 2025 season with one of the most impressive wins of the week, a 21-20 win over reigning sectional champion Huntington North. The Eastern Hancock Royals considered a toss-up with Greencastle going into the game. The Royals scored 36 points in the first quarter on their way to a 50-14 victory. The Lapel Bulldogs announced themselves as a serious 2A contender with a 23-7 win over a strong 3A team in Hamilton Heights. And the Westfield Shamrocks proved they're once again one of the teams to beat in Central Indiana with a 35-0 shutout of Homestead in their 2025 debut. 5 great candidates, but I think of all of them, Carmel beat the best team, and they beat them handily. So the Carmel Greyhounds are the Central Indiana Sports Report football team of the week for Week 1. Please stay tuned for our Week 1 Central Indiana Top 20 Power Poll.
You're listening to the Central Indiana Sports Report with your host, Greg Mengel.
Man, this was tough. Last year was pretty tough when we only had 30 schools. This year that we have about 50. We included Hancock, Hamilton, and Boone counties. They all have good football teams. So there's some really good teams left on the outside of this power poll. Let's start with some teams that I really didn't consider in the top 20 but deserved a mention this week. Of course, Muncie Central, huge win. Wouldn't be surprised at all if Kyle Barish has the Bearcats in the top 20 at some point this season. Also, Marion, Clinton Central, Hamilton Heights, and Sheridan deserve mention. 4 teams that got serious consideration to be in the power poll: 0-1 Oak Hill and 0-1 Mount Vernon, plus 1-0 Yorktown and 1-0 Pendleton Heights, just outside of the top 20. The way this poll works, it is not who would beat who head-to-head. It's way more about record, competition played, how they stack up against their class, plus my bias, and a little bit of who would win head-to-head. I'm going to go through this quickly. Sure, I'll hear about this because I know there are teams that would beat others that they are behind in the power poll. Again, that is not what this is about. For example, our number 20 team is the Delphi Oracles. Clearly would not beat Yorktown, Pendleton Heights, or Mount Vernon head-to-head, but they are ahead of the 3 because they are a smaller class and opened the season with a 54-0 win over Delphi. I should mention that the top 20, every team won, except for one team, so I'm not even going to mention their records. Number 19 is Alexandria, 18, Logansport, 17, Carroll. Number 16 is Taylor. Number 15 is Tipton. 14 is Eastern. 13 is Fishers, the only team that lost last week. Number 12 is Zionsville. Coming in at number 11 is Noblesville. Guerin Catholic is 10th. By the way, this poll dominated by Hamilton and Grant counties. Number 9 is Eastern Hancock. Number 8, Eastbrook. Number 7 is Carmel. Number 6 is the Madison Grant Argyles. Hamilton Southeastern comes in at number 5. Mississinawa is 4th. Lapel, number 3. I had a really hard time between number 2 and number 1, but I decided New Pal is number 2, and our number 1 team in the Central Indiana Sports Report Top 20 Power Poll is the Westfield Shamrocks. Thanks to Rob, Scott, Richie, and Jay for joining the Central Indiana Sports Report, and to Grant, even though he didn't make it onto the show. And thank you for listening. Please do us a huge favor and share this podcast with the high school football fans in your life and help spread the word that the Central Indiana Sports Report is here talking about Central Indiana sports every single day. Thank you so much. Do us a huge favor and check out Central Indiana Sports Central every single morning, where we talk about the Pacers, Colts, IU, Purdue, the Fever, IndyCar, Butler, Ball State, and of course, the best high school sports coverage in Central Indiana. The Central Indiana Sports Report is a product of ITG Media, and I love Susie.